Hey listeners, it's Jana. Welcome back to Grief Out Loud. Almost exactly 2 years ago, we took a risk and put together an episode on grieving for a pet. We were hesitant because we worried that our listeners who are grieving for a person would feel like we were comparing or minimizing their loss in some way. But we slowed it down and realized that the death of a pet is a death and a loss, and it comes with its own unique experience of grief. I'm back with another conversation about grieving for a pet. This time with Christine Passo, whose beloved dog Maya Ray died suddenly and very unexpectedly just a few months ago in May of 2024. Christine is a coach who specializes in supporting women through life changes that are prompted by or lead to loss and grief. She's also the co-author of a new book, My Fur Baby Wrote This Book. Not to get too personal, but I do a lot of interviews about grief, and for most of them, I'm present, but not emotionally impacted, at least not in the moment. This time, things were different. Longtime listeners will know that another reason we were hesitant to do an episode about pet loss is because it terrifies me. My dog Captain is 15 and has slowly been fading away for the past few months. I don't know how much longer he'll be here, but what I do know is that during my conversation with Christine, I was having a lot of big emotions. Even editing was rough. I'd listen for minutes at a time and realize I hadn't heard a word. You know that I can't focus while grieving thing? It's 1,000% true. I'm grateful, though, that there are people like Christine in the world willing to share so publicly about the experience of losing a pet, so that others, like me, can learn from her and have our experiences normalized. Quick note about terms. There are lots of ways people talk about their animals. Some, like me, use pet. Some use companion animal, and others, like Christine, use fur baby. Christine, welcome to Grief Out Loud. I'm really glad you're here.
Thank you so much, Jana. I'm very happy to be here and have this conversation. Thank you. Thank you so much for inviting me.
And listeners, just so you know, there was like a little bit of a circuitous route that Christine and I took to having this conversation, because this is our second episode that we are doing around grieving the death of a pet. And it's something that on Grief Out Loud, we really went back and forth for a long time. Like, are we going to do that? Are we not? And we did one episode about a year and a half ago with Deborah Lee talking about how to support kids and teens when a pet has died. And I didn't know how it was going to go over. And it continues to be the number one most downloaded episode of all of Grief Out Loud. And then a couple of months ago, Christine emailed me to share about your story of your beloved dog, Maya Ray. And then I lost the email and I couldn't find it no matter what. And thankfully, Christine emailed me again to say, hey. So we almost missed each other. So I'm really glad you're here and really grateful for your willingness to come and talk about Maya Ray.
It's interesting how the universe will work like that, right? So you were already having that thought, and then I found your podcast and thought, oh, this sounds like a really beautiful fit. So my persistent paid off.
So let's talk about Maya Ray. I mean, listeners, you can't see the video right now, but Christine has a montage of photos behind her of basically the cutest dog I think I've ever seen. And so I know she was cute. And I know she also had a lot of other things about her. So let's talk a little bit about her.
So Maya Ray, let's see, should I start in the beginning or the end? Let's see, I'm going to start a little bit at the end. Our Maya Ray passed away on May 28th of this year, so May 28th, 2024. And it was very sudden. We did not expect it. And because of that, it was traumatic. I don't think there is ever a death that anybody experiences when it's sudden and unexpected that is not traumatic. And I'll get more into the details of how she passed away. But she was 8 years and almost 3 months old. And she was a Sheltie. We had 2 Shelties. Now we have one. Zoe is 11 and Maya Ray was a little bit over 8 years. And they're just really beautiful, affectionate, kind of crazy, high energy. They need a lot of brain work. They need a lot of that kind of intellectual stimulation. They're both tried and true Shelties. And we brought Maya home at 8.5 weeks old, as you mentioned, the cutest puppy we'd ever seen. In fact, I just put out a book I co-authored, and that's chapter 1. of my section, which is the cutest puppy we'd ever seen. And she really was. She was just, even when she passed away, she was only 17 pounds. She was a little giant fluff ball. I mean, you would think she was twice the amount of her weight. And she was just a bundle of energy. But we used to say you can't be that cute and sweet without having other things wrong with you. And Maya Ray did. She, from the minute we brought her home, she had high GI distress issues. It took me 2 years to figure out formula of food to feed to her that didn't upset her stomach. And even still, she would have random bouts of flare ups that, I mean, could never be explained. It was just her system. So on and off flare ups with Maya was, when she wanted to go outside, it's like, oh no, is she having another flare up? There was always that sense of urgency and nervousness as her parent, as her human, wondering, is she okay today? Is she going to be okay today? She also was very anxious, which is a common trait of the Shelties. But Maya was in particular very anxious. She hated the car. She got car sick. She didn't like to be left alone, which she really wasn't left alone for long periods of time. I've worked from home for a long time, even before COVID. And I never wanted to leave her alone more than 3 or 4 hours because we would pay a price. When your dog is anxious and then you come home, she's extremely needy and constantly begging for your attention. But then what was so interesting is the next morning, probably for about 5 hours after we woke up, she was exhausted. It's like she needed to sleep off that emotional anxiety. So she was just a really interesting dog. She ended up with a heart murmur, a very minimal, small, low stage heart murmur. And then a year before she passed away, she also was diagnosed with hypothyroidism. So it's like, anytime something happened with Maya, it was just like, oh my gosh, one more thing for me to worry about. I mean, I would have dreams, Jana, that Maya got out and got lost. And she just wasn't one of those smart dogs that would be like, okay, let me sniff my way back home. She would wander and end up anywhere. And so I'd have these horrible dreams that she got out and that I couldn't find her. I mean, that just is an indicator of how often I worried about her.
Mm.
A dog like that who requires constant nurturing and attention and care is a dog that is very, very loved because it takes a lot of love to give that kind of care. And, I know a lot of people experience this with other humans that become ill or elderly and require that care. And it changes the dynamic of that relationship that is very difficult to describe, but it just really stretched my heart quite a bit. Maya was just a very, very special dog.
And I know sometimes in multi-pet families with multi-humans, one dog is one person's dog and dog might be the other person's dog. I'm sensing that might be a dynamic that was happening in your household.
So you're going to be surprised when I tell you the answer to that, which is Maya essentially was soulmates with my partner. And Zoe and I are soulmates. But because Shelties are so connected to their humans, and I mean, really, it's like having that pack is not just about them, it's about their entire family, that they're not settled until the whole family is there. So Zoe follows me around the house and always has. And Maya used to follow my partner around the house. But if all four of us weren't together, neither dog was settled. I mean, it was obvious. When are they coming home? They would watch out the storm door to make sure that, when is somebody coming home? It's like, I don't feel complete. So it was really, really interesting. And I'll tell you, we also learned how connected our dogs were, that in real time in everyday life, I wouldn't have said that they were. They were so much more drawn to us, their parents, their humans, that they didn't play that much. But to witness Zoe's grief, which I'm sure we'll talk about after the fact, has been so devastating and also beautiful at the same time.
So you've talked a little bit about the various medical challenges that Maya Ray had, throughout from kind of day one with her and the level of care that you provided and the vigilance that kind of comes with that, the emotional and mental vigilance. And I'm curious, her death, as you mentioned, was really sudden, very unexpected, despite kind of years of dealing with that. So can you talk a bit about like the last day or days with Maya?
Sure. So we have a family cabin that's in the Blue Ridge Mountains of Virginia. and it was Memorial Day weekend, and we were there. And normally Maya just loves it up there. I mean, she just loves to explore. The dogs are off leash because it's a really remote mountaintop, and they just love it. And Maya was really tired and not exactly being herself, but she also had had an elbow injury that just wouldn't go away. So we were thinking, well, maybe she's just in a little bit of pain. So, we're not going to force her to do anything if she just wants to sleep. Okay. So she was exhibiting levels of exhaustion. But, again, Maya with her flare ups and her hypothyroidism a year before, these were not um, different symptoms for Maya. I was a little bit more concerned, but I also, maybe I could say this, would obsess over whether or not something was wrong or not. So it's like, am I being a hyper parent or am I not? But it wasn't enough to really create a change of we need to leave the mountain and get her help. It was not like that at all. So we came home that Monday. Tuesday morning, which is the day that Maya passed away, she was coughing and gagging. And that went on for about an hour. And then she stopped coughing and was really struggling to catch her breath. So it was like she was using her entire body to breathe. Her whole chest would go in and go out. And I thought, okay, well, I don't know what this is. And our vet doesn't open until 8:30. So I'm just going to change my clothes and get her in my car and dial as I go. Because here in our area, I'm not sure about any other areas in the United States, but since COVID, a lot of the ER hospitals and even the veterinarian clinics are understaffed. And so they are not able to take all the dogs that come in. So you could rush your dog to a vet ER, but they don't have room. So, 40-minute drive. And then it's like, what are you going to do? So I knew I needed to get her in the car and dial. The first vet I called, they didn't have an actual physician in yet. And they said, I can't confirm or deny that you bring Maya in. Let me call you back. Well, Maya was in the back seat of my car and her tongue was turning a light blue. I don't know anything about, well, I do now about congestive heart failure, but at the time I did not. And I knew that she was really struggling. So I called a vet that we used to see and they said, bring her in right away. And so I did. So I brought Maya in. She was in the back seat of my car, which she, as I mentioned, she already hates the car. So I'm just devastated that she's not feeling well. And she's in the back seat of the car. And I get her in and they scoop her up and they take her back. At this point, it's almost 9 a.m. And I'm waiting. I'm just waiting and they're giving her tests and I'm not seeing her, but they're doing the best they can. They said either it's congestive heart failure or it's pneumonia, but they can't confirm one or the other, and they can't aggressively treat one or the other because it could hinder, right? So it was a real, difficult situation for them. But they said, no matter what, she can be treated, but she needs to go to an overnight care ER facility. She said the first one she called was booked. They were full. And the second one had one spot and they're holding it for Maya Ray. And so it now is I have to transport her. And something that's really important to point out, Jana, is that the vet had told me that Maya was very upset when they took her back. Maya did not like the vet at all. Again, anxious dog. And so I just felt terrible, of course, that she's anxious and sick in my mind. She's just sick. So they sedated her so that they could perform these tests. They had to give her x-rays, had to take blood. So they sedated her. But in my mind, this is what's so crazy about the whole day. In my mind, I'm thinking, oh, she got like the equivalent of a Valium, right? And she's just chill. She's just relaxed versus sedated, which means she's asleep. She is not registering anything. I mean, she's registering life, but I mean, her eyes are not open. And so, came to find out that the transport had to be done by me. So again, we're not realizing the full just devastation of capacity that Maya is sick, dying. And so I call a friend and I said, hey, can you come by? You can drive my car. I'll be in the back seat with Maya. I'll hold her. We can go to the overnight vet. So they bring Maya out, and that's when reality struck. She's just laying in their arms. I was like, oh my gosh, what is happening right now? So at this point, it's been 3 hours since I've been at the vet. And I get in the back seat of my car, and the vet care team, they put her in my arms, and they said, this is where she had her IV, just be sensitive for that spot. And I'm trying to hold her in a position that helps her to breathe because I knew it was a struggle. And Janet was just seconds when she took her last breath. We hadn't even put the car in reverse. And I was absolutely in shock about it. I mean, Maya was my baby. We called her baby. She was going to be a baby until she left this earth, and she was. So I rushed her back in, but she had filled up with fluid, and unfortunately her body just there was no life in her anymore, and she passed away, and it was just devastating. It was absolutely devastating.
And sitting in this place of how hard your mind was trying to catch up with all the things that were happening around you and how it just didn't make any sense. It didn't make sense. What are we doing? And making like trying to do the logistics while your heart is like, what is happening? And then to have her just take her last breath in your arms.
Yes. And when I told people that she was in my arms when she took her last breath, most people said, "Well, that's so beautiful that you were holding her." And yes, I wouldn't have wanted her to take her last breath anywhere else than my arms or my partner's arms or home in a controlled environment. But it wasn't gentle, it wasn't beautiful, it wasn't peaceful. It was devastating. And so that and grief, right? So you take the traumatic event and the devastation of even what was a beautiful moment in that she was with who she loved when she passed away. It makes the grieving that much harder because people want to say, "Oh, that's so wonderful. That's so beautiful." Meanwhile, you're just caving on the inside of the trauma of that. And pairing grief and trauma is very difficult to process and to create, really a system of healing around that, because which one do you deal with first?
Well, and I was thinking as you said that, and it's like the details of the situation matter to each person who went through that situation. But in reality, it's the story that other people make up based on what they assume those details equate emotionally. And then that expectation that gets put upon you to have to navigate, how do I respond? Do I burst this person's bubble and be like, actually, it was horrible what happened? Or do I let them have their narrative that it was a beautiful moment and then maybe judge myself for how much grief I'm feeling? And so it's just so complicated. And the thing that makes the grief harder is oftentimes how we have to either change, suppress, or diminish our own experience in reaction to how somebody else is assuming we're doing or what their expectation is.
Right. And so much of it, and there's no blame on anybody for this, that we all don't want to see other people suffer. So we are raised to find the positive. We are raised to cheer people up. We are raised to help them see the brighter side of a moment. And so I think that's what our natural reaction is when we hear somebody's going through a hard time. I heard a lot of things such as, "Well, you gave her such a great life. Without you, she wouldn't have led, such a great life," or "She was so lucky to have you." And they need that. People that are supporting need to find something positive to make them feel better because they don't know how to sit with you in the muck. They just don't. And so, again, there's no blame. But for the griever, it's very isolating. It's very neglectful. It creates a response that then the griever says, at least I did, "Yeah, I don't want to share with you because those words actually make me feel worse, even though that's not your intention. And now I kind of feel worse because I have to sit with this on my own." And that's a really, really hard thing for grievers to go through and for me to have gone through.
Can we talk for a second about that specific comment? And again, like, right, no shame. I'm sure I've said it. I'll say it to myself in terms of that. But I feel like that's something that's really unique and specific to being a pet parent. And that most people don't say, if your sibling dies or your parent dies, like, at least you gave them a good life. It's like, well, they had a good life and I was a part of it. But oftentimes people have this assumption, like, you gave that to your pet. So What is your reaction or response internally when you hear those words? Like, at least you gave Maya this amazing life.
I mean, on the inside, I'm kind of boxing at the inside of my body, saying and screaming, of course I gave her a great life. I loved her. She was my baby. She was our dog. And not even a dog. She was a fur family member. When we bring our I don't have any kids, so and even if I did, the love would be just as strong. We give these animals everything, and they never not depend on us. See, that's the thing that I think a lot of people forget about. So when you're raising a child at a certain age, you could have a small refrigerator in your house or a lower cabinet that you leave snacks in. Your child can go get something to drink or something to eat. They can let themselves out. There's certain things, but your dog, your fur animal, your cat, they always depend on you for all of those things, in particular dogs. And so we are 24/7 all the time, needing to think for them, read their mind, and care for them. And that never ends until they pass away. And yes, with humans, there's always love, there's always care. I mean, once you're a parent, you're always a parent, regardless of the age of that, 50-year-old child. But there's just something, and there's no comparison because I don't see any benefit in comparing fur baby death to human death to any species whatsoever. There is a sense of loyalty and dependence that never ever goes away, and that creates a very special bond with animals and their humans.
It reminds me of when someone is grieving and someone says, "Oh, you're so strong." And they're like, "Well, I'm just surviving. Like, this is what I'm doing. So I don't have a choice about that." And that sort of reaction, where again, it's well intentioned, it just can close down a conversation to learn a little bit more about what that person's actually experiencing. Christine, another thing I'm thinking about is you're with Maya in the back seat of your car. She takes her last breath. You rush her back into the vet. You're with your friend. And then I'm thinking about needing to tell your partner and needing to show or tell Zoe, Maya's sibling dog. How was that experience?
So my friend actually told my partner. So when I brought Maya back in, they gave her CPR. And of course it wasn't, she was not responding. And so I asked them to bring her to me. And so I was with Maya and just devastated. I mean, the shock, it just arrives. There's just nothing you could do about it. And so my friend said, let me call Jenny, you be with Maya. Because that's all I wanted to do. I just wanted to be with Maya. And so she shared the news with her, and then she had about a 30-minute drive to me. She was devastated, of course. But when we got home, I actually got home first just by a few minutes after we'd spent a lot of time with Maya. And all Zoe knew is that I left quite quickly with Maya. And now I've come home and I'm alone. And Zoe is very smart. She is very, very aware of her surroundings. And so she's looking for Maya. And I had Maya's collar. And so I'm crying, of course, the beginning of many, many days of crying and shock. And I got down in our usual greeting area. I call it the breezeway. It's essentially between the front door and the TV room. And I'm, kneeling down and hugging her and loving on her. And I said, Maya's not coming home, Zos. She's gone. And of course, Zoe doesn't understand English. She doesn't know human language, but I had her smell Maya's collar. But I think Zoe was more cued in to our emotional response and the scent that we're putting off. Especially Shelties, they have longer snouts. And so their sense of smell is very, very strong. So she knew something was wrong. But I don't think she knew exactly what.
And you said that was the first of many days of shock and crying. What do you remember about those first few days and weeks?
Really, I call it a grief haze or unconscious neglect, where I'm just going through the motions. Barely. I remember taking a shower the day after. All I did was cry the whole time I was in the shower. You're just all I kept saying was, I can't believe she's gone. She was just here. Like, this doesn't seem real, which is a very common response for people that experience an unexpected death in their lives. And especially with Maya, who was so incredibly full of life. I mean, there's just not enough time for me to really get into all of the ways that Maya just brightened up our lives, but it was unbelievably surreal. And then to watch Zoe really struggle was very difficult. Um, I I didn't eat very much. We actually juiced, so we had just bought a juicer about so many weeks before. That's how we got our nutrition for the first week, was juicing, and it's how we could bond together and just be together. And we were very communicative. My partner and I, we were very communicative. She was off work for a few days, and I couldn't work. There was just no way. So Maya died on a Tuesday. And I remember Saturday morning, we got up and we had breakfast, and I was enjoying my second cup of coffee. And all of a sudden, I just felt unbelievably overwhelmed with emotion. And it put me to sleep. It was so intense. And to me, that was the shock wearing off. That was, even though I was crying the days before and just devastated, this was different. This was that heavy load of realistic grief, although I still hadn't accepted it yet, but it was very powerful. And I just closed my eyes and went to sleep for 3 hours right there in an armchair. Grief is very, very powerful.
I had this image of you landing into the grief and your body being like, too much. I gotta
Yeah.
take a nap.
I mean, that's exactly what happened. I had no control over it whatsoever. And I remember how incredibly exhausted I was that whole day.
Mm.
Because of course, grief is exhausting. Your body is you're essentially in survival mode. Because you don't know how to live your life at that moment, because every single thing about it is changed, especially with a pet. Like I said, I mean, we got up, I gave her breakfast, we went outside to pick up poop, we wandered in the yard, we went out at 11 again and we played. And I mean, my whole day was built around, especially catering to Maya. And that nurturing need now was gone. And it's very, very difficult to restructure your life in a way that you don't want to, right? Because now everything you're doing it for a different reason. And so trying to rationalize that and come to terms with it at the same time when you're just really out of shock, it's a lot. It's a lot. And it's just, especially with fur baby humans that go through this loss, who have other human friends that don't quite get it. Maybe they don't have pets in their life, or they do, but their bond is different. Because again, we all grieve differently. We all have different relationships that feel differently. Luckily, I was not being dishonored in my grief at that time, but I know a lot of people are, and it just breaks my heart because then they're suffering in silence, and that's heartbreaking in itself.
Let's go back to Zoe, because I know you came home. You said, Maya's not coming home. What did you notice in Zoe over the first couple days, the week, month, even now?
Yeah. It's such a great question and such an important question. So I think people end up being surprised that the surviving animal is grieving. They think, oh, they're an animal, they're resilient, they'll be fine. But they have just as strong of feelings. And again, no comparison there. So it's interesting. So Zoe had a cat companion the first year of her life. And that cat turned 17 and was sick and needed to be put down. And Zoe, she mourned and grieved after that. She was very sleepy, very tired, lack of energy. And she also ended up with a skin infection, which is really interesting because she also got a skin infection when Maya died. So I wanted to mention that to say that I've seen Zoe, I've witnessed her go through grief, but this was different. So as I mentioned, Maya and Zoe didn't really play together that much. They were so much more into their humans and, hey, you play with me. I want to come snuggle with you. So I was very curious to see Zoe's reaction. And Zoe was exhausted. She slept so much. She just wanted me to hold her, which is odd for Zoe. Zoe likes to make decisions on her own. She doesn't want you to just come and pick her up. She wants to come to your arms because she's chosen that, and only during the cold months. especially being a long-haired Sheltie. And here we are, it's late May, early June, and she just wanted me to hold her. And we would just sit there and watch the birds, and I would cry and I'd sit with her. And but what was really interesting, Jana, is around 3 o'clock in the morning, she did this for about 6 or 7 weeks. She would come in the room so that the dogs have full roam of our house. We don't, nothing's off limits. And she'd come into the bedroom and whine. And I'm like, okay, well, does she need to go out? And she would just stand there. So I'd get up, get out of bed, walk through the hallway, and she would just stand there. And we did this a couple nights in a row. And then it dawned on me. I'm like, Zoe had a ritual. She, around this time every night, would go and check on Maya. She'd go and say, "Where's my sister?" "Okay, there you are." "Okay." Because Maya would sleep all over the house. Like Maya didn't have her few spots. Zoe has her few spots. Maya would be anywhere. And so Zoe would have to comb the house and look for her. And so she would whine as if to say, "I'm trying to find Maya and I can't find her." And so I would just, I'd let Zoe out just to make sure she didn't have to go. And I'd bring her back to bed and get her beside me. And she did that for like 7 weeks. She also, so Zoe and Maya had separate beds. And Zoe never got in Maya's bed. But it was a few days after Maya died. It was like 4 days after she died. Zoe just went and she got on Maya's bed, circled it a few times, which is a dog thing, laid down and just stared at me. And I have pictures of her doing that. She did that 3 times within a matter of 3 months after Maya died. She hasn't done it. But just that kind of behavior to really be sensitive to. She also lost weight. I was feeding her more, not out of let me feed your depression, but I was trying to play games with her to get her mind off of grieving. There are a lot of um, dog scientists or dog veterinarians that say, hey, if your dog is grieving, get them more active. So I was playing treat games with her where I would hide them around the house or whatever it might be. So she was getting a little bit more activity, but more treats, and she was losing weight and with the skin infection. So she physically was responding to her grief and emotionally. So it happens. And the best thing we can do for our loved ones, even though it's so hard for us to just get up every day, right? When grief is that hard, but they need it too. And it's actually good for us to be giving back to that pet that is still there, because that's our way of continuing that nurturing and that love that we can't actively give to the pet that is passed.
It seems like, too, in that process of helping Zoe acclimate, you kept a lot of Maya's beds, toys, things like that around the house, where some folks might have the need or the instinct to like pack it all up or move it or get rid of it in some way because it's a really painful reminder. But for Zoe, it seemed like having Maya's things around was a part of the process for her.
Yeah, we weren't really sure what to do, Jana. And the thing is, the toys, they played with all the toys together. So if we got rid of the toys, I'd be like, I'm still here. Why are you getting rid of the toys? So they did everything together in that sense, except for the bed. And even the bed, like I said, Maya slept all over the place. So we called it Maya's bed. It's not like she was in it all the time, right? They're just always around, but it was called Maya's bed. And I know that's an interesting decision. People feel like they need to get rid of it because every time they look at the bed or that toy, that it reminds them of their passed on fur baby. And it's really painful. I mean, I guess we found comfort in it, that because it was such a shock, it just felt wrong. I felt like it was betrayal to get rid of her things when she'll always be a part of our lives. She'll always be in our hearts. We always want to have conversations about her. That's us. Everybody has to do what is best for them. And hopefully they're doing it because it's helping them work through their grieving process and not bypassing it.
Well, I appreciate that, the permission is there for however people, just like with when a human in our life dies, that we have decisions to make about belongings and that we get to do what feels best for us. So one of the things that you've written and spoken about is how, and it comes through so clearly in how you talk about it, is how like intense and heartbreaking Maya's death was and is and that grief, and that it was kind of surprising to you because you've had other grief experiences in your life of this one being showing up the way it did. What's been your sense of that in the last few months?
Gosh, this is such a, I mean, I have goosebumps and I just started sweating at the same time when you asked me that. Because even just this morning, I had a bout of tears and high emotion. So I thought I knew grief on many different levels. I have lost family members. I have lost good friends from a variety of whether it was illness or death by suicide, older age, job loss grief, because there are so many different types of grief. But when we're talking about death and end of life, it is different. But I had gone through so many emotional struggles just in my own life that I thought, okay, I've been through it. I'm empathetic. I'm here to listen. I'm not rushing anybody. Like your experience is yours. Then Maya happened. She, as I mentioned, was our baby. She required so much attention, and I probably, will have the same feeling of loss when Zoe goes, but it'll be different, of course, because the circumstances will be different. But I was just so incredibly crushed and having such a hard time accepting it. It took me week 7 until I accepted it. All I did was say, I just want her back. I just want her back. And in that, I was I was keeping myself in a standing still position for my grief progression. I mean, this is going to be a long time. This is going to be a long process and I accept that. I'm okay with that. But the depth of shock, despair, devastation, sadness, isolation. Um, I mean, I'm trying to think of all just like the most gut wrenching, words that I can come up with that describe it, because every single one of them is associated with how I felt and feel. I mean, I'm up and doing my thing. I'm working, I'm a coach. I'm working with my clients, which is, I just love it so much. I mean, that's so helpful to me to be able to help other people. And I've really been trying very hard to memorialize Maya in such a way that is a symbol of how largely she lived her life and how largely she contributed to ours. I feel like I'm getting lost in my response a little bit, but I think what happened is I had never let another beating heart into my life the way that I did Maya. I've never had to be such a caretaker, um, and offer so much unconditional love. I'd never been in a position to do that before. And she was the dogs, our fur babies. They're it. They're it. And it just taught me a level of grief that opened my heart to so many others that have grieved this way and continue to grieve this way.
So it caught you off guard, maybe the severity, the intensity, the duration of that time period of like, I can't let this be true. I can't let this be true. I just want her back. And it seems like you've also stepped into a place of really advocating for other folks who are grieving when a pet dies to have their experience and to legitimize the intensity of that grief too.
Yes, absolutely. The days of, oh, it's just a dog, you can get another one, right? I mean, that's something that a lot of people hear very often. Oh, just fill your heart with another one, everything will be fine. But, we don't substitute love in our lives. We don't do that. We just add on to it.
Mm.
So Maya Ray, that spot in my heart, and Zoe's spot, that they're not to be substituted. They will always be there. And now it's a matter of finding how to refill as much as possible that place in my heart that has been a hole since Maya left, and doing this work and speaking up about fur baby loss and sharing Maya's story, how important it is to recognize the bond and the love shared between fur babies and their owners, because it's very, very special. And in most cases, most people can't even fully describe how special it is because it's just between them and their fur baby. It's like how, most of that is just shared between your eyes and the hugs and those moments together. So it's so important to share the reality of that grief. Absolutely. And support it.
I get the sense, Christine, that you are a doer. I don't know if that feels like an accurate assessment.
Yes, yes.
So you talked about, like the trauma of Maya Ray's death, in addition to the grief and how those two things are interwoven. I'm curious, are there things you've been doing that felt like an active way of engaging with grief or processing that trauma?
Yes. So when it happened, when Maya passed away, I knew within days. I knew within days there was a major lesson in this for me because even though I thought I already knew grief and was talking about grief on a different level, I knew there was something I needed to pay attention to. There was something happening that I was supposed to incorporate into my life, into the lives of others. And so I've been taking such very careful notice of what I'm going through and the conversations I'm having with others and what they've gone through and realized so I'm a coach, I'm a life coach for women and I mainly focused on purpose and transformation. But I realized in this experience and what I was really starting to edge towards before Maya passed away was that we start with the idea, the need to change because we feel broken. Something doesn't feel right. Something feels off. We feel unfinished. We feel unresolved. And there are many times in grief, in loss, that we shove it under the rug, right? Society says, move on. Tomorrow's another day, all those positive platitudes that confuses us and make us feel that we're not supposed to grieve as long as we are. So I remember I was 2 weeks into my grief and somebody wrote on my LinkedIn page, don't let it go on for too long. And I thought, what does that even mean? What does that mean too long? And and I just realized that I wanted people to start and come to me because they're feeling grief. They're feeling like they've been recycling grief. They're in the middle of new grief because grief, when it is walked through, right, and learned from, and when I mean learn from, it means we really truly recognize the impact on us, not just the event. When we do that, there is an amazing transformation because there's no way anyone can go through that kind of a loss and not transform their lives. It just happens. I mean, it's part of the cycle. It's like you get up every morning, okay, now you're transformed. But when on the occasions that it's swept under the rug or people aren't given enough time or permission to grieve, they're unable to learn from it. And that's the grief that continues to recycle in their lives. And so it has become so important for me to be that guide, to be that person who says, I'm here with open arms. I understand whether you've been coping with this for years, decades, or it's new. We're going to walk that path together because there is beauty through it. There's sadness, but there's beauty through it. And you always have me, always going to validate your feelings, and we're going to help get you through. So that's been a huge part of the gift that has come out of this and the action that has come out of my grief.
You mentioned earlier that even this morning, before we signed on for this interview, big wave of grief came through, lots of crying. And I think about there's the way the grief just shows up, and then there's the story we tell ourselves about the grief that's showing up or how it's showing up or when it's showing up. When that happens for you, what is the story that you say to yourself about that experience?
So that's a story that changes all the time because my grief is evolving all the time. My awareness is evolving all the time. And I think I don't think, I know that what I'm telling myself when the grief comes on is feel it. Don't push it away. It's okay. It doesn't matter how long it's been. I mean, it's been 4.5 months. It's really not that long, right? I mean, I'm dreading the holidays because 3/4 of the ornaments we put on our tree are our dogs. And so, there's a whole cycle of things that we all have to go through, whether it's a fur baby or a human, when we're dealing with that loss. And so, what I'm always so kind to myself with is it's okay. Feel it. If you need to cry, cry. Maybe go out for a walk, instead of just sitting in your desk chair feeling super sad, or let's put Zoe on her leash and go for a walk, do something. but it has very much affected me physically. I've noticed that I don't have the same as much energy to work out like I used to. But I also, again, am very accepting and forgiving of that, saying this season of grief that I'm in. It's okay. It's okay that my feelings are telling me what I need and rest and work and this action behind supporting other people. That's where it's coming from. But I 100% am honoring myself because I deserve it and so does Maya.
When I'm talking to kids and families who are grieving a person, a human in their life that has died, there's all the daily rituals and routines, but then there's those annual cyclical things like the holidays that you mentioned. And what are you anticipating we're getting into that holiday season now? And what are some things that you think you might do around the memorialization and the honoring of Maya?
So I love that you asked that because I'm already actually in the thick of that feeling because again, they're Shelties, they're long haired dogs, so cooler temperatures. They love it. They love to be outside. So I live in Virginia, so the summers are really warm and humid, and they don't really enjoy being outside. It's really difficult to go for walks. So come fall, the temperatures drop and we'd go for more walks on the weekends because we can be outside with them and then maybe we take them with us when we go to lunch. We can take them out more with us than we can those 4 months of summer. And so it's been really hard. Actually, it's really funny. I used to send my partner a text. So today's a perfect day. I think the high is like 63. It was cool this morning. And this is when I would send her a text and say, "Oh, Maya left a note. She packed a bag. She's got treats and she's moving outside." It's like these little things that just spur these moments. And so these colder temperatures are going to be hard because that's when we would spend our most fully active time with them and take both dogs with us as many places as possible. And I will also tell you that in a week, we're taking a vacation and we're going back up to the family cabin and we're going to spread some of Maya's ashes. And we have two different memorial stones that we ordered through Etsy. They're absolutely beautiful. Please, if anybody wants to know the name, please reach out to me. I'm happy to share. Just beautiful work. And so we're going to spread some of her ashes and then put the two stones above that. And they're beautiful. It says, Maya's love forever, and these really beautiful words on it. And so I'm emotional thinking about going back up there and doing that. But that's also, I know, part of the process, right? Like everything we go through, everything I go through is all part of healing and accepting that she's gone and just continuing to open up that massive, massive amount of love that I'll always have for her.
Well, Christine, I feel like I just went on an emotional ride with you
Believe
talking
me.
about Maya Ray,
Yeah, I know.
talking about these fur babies, these pets that we love so dearly, and I'm very grateful that you are doing that advocacy work and having these conversations and giving people who are grieving their fur babies, their pets, their companion animals, permission to have their grief be valid and legitimized and just to make it okay that it exists and to really honor it. And I know you're doing some of that work in your own work with your podcast, Unconscious Evolution, and your new book, My Fur Baby Wrote This Book. Are there other places you want listeners to be able to continue to connect with you?
Certainly, my website is by far the best place because it has access to everywhere. Really, there's access to my YouTube channel for Unconscious Evolution. It takes you to my Instagram page where I post a lot of different, information about grief and feeling validated in your grief, and of course, fur baby love, which is so incredibly important. Um, but yes, my fur baby wrote this book has been a beautiful experience that just released. So that's another reason it's been an emotional week. I'm a co-author alongside four other authors, and it's just another opportunity to share Maya's story and memorialize her and get people more aware of how important our fur babies are. So thank you. And thank you so much for this opportunity to share. And I hope that our conversation is very healing and supportive to the listeners that follow the Dougie Center. And the wonderful services that you all provide. It's really beautiful.
Well, thank you again, Christine, and thanks to Maya Ray for being part of this conversation with us too. And I'm definitely not going to forget that photo of the cutest puppy that ever was, listeners. I'll put it on the social media so you will see just how adorable Maya Ray is. So, Christine, thank you again.
Thank you so much, Jenna. It's a pleasure.
And listeners out there, I know you're tired of me saying this, but I have to say it. Thank you each and every time for tuning in, for sharing the show with someone that you think might be helped by what we're talking about, for connecting with us on our email. We'd love to hear from you. It's griefoutloud@dougy.org. It's dougy.org. It's the main website for Dougy Center, who produces Grief Out Loud. And it's also where you can find free downloadable resources like tip sheets, activity sheets, each and every episode of Grief Out Loud, and information about our local programming. If you want to support the show, we'd love for you to do a rating and a review, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you listen. And thanks as always to the Chester Stephan Endowment Fund for their support of the podcast. Thanks for listening. We'll hope you join us again next time.